G'day and welcome back to Be Less Last and this next episode of my video kit gear guide, where I'm going to show you the kit that I use to make these videos in the first place. Now, the last episode we were talking about the cameras that I use, and I went through the basics of the cameras and their settings. But it's no use having the good camera if it's not stable on the boat. We need good mounts. So this time round, I'm going to show you the mounts that I use and how I use them and how I fix them onto the boats. And to do that, we're going to go outside. So we're here outside and we're talking about mounts. Now, the main ones that I use on the boats, this is my Lightning. We can see there's the two suction cup mounts that I often use. There'll be one facing forward just to get a bit of atmosphere and just show the surroundings and whatever, one facing backwards, usually towards me, just to see me and my hapless sailing, mounted forwards and backwards there on these suction mounts. Now, this one over here, that's brand new. I've hardly used that. In fact, I've never used it until today. That's by Small Rig. This one is a GoPro suction mount. Now, they're really strong. These suction cups, they're really, really strong. I've never had one fall off, which means you can probably guarantee one will fall off during the season at some point next year. I hope not. I've lost one last year. If you watch the Bala video, wasn't a suction mount, and it was down to my tomfoolery, to be perfectly honest, but I did lose a mount and a camera at Bala last year. Now, one of my absolute favourite mounts, and the one I was talking about earlier being particularly interesting, I found these last year, and you'll have seen the shots when I've had shots down the mast or even forward that looks like a drone. People are convinced they were drone shots. Absolutely weren't. They weren't drone shots, because most of the clubs I go to, we're not allowed to use drones, but I wanted a way of showing from a height, to show, if you're in a big fleet, you can show the whole fleet, and then down the mast. It's just always an interesting shot. But if you use the kind of GoPro ones that you would use on the boom, and I'll show you that in a minute later, well, you can't, because you can't get all the way around the mast, because your sail's got to go up it. What you can use are these ones from a company called Flymount. Now, Flymount make these mounts specifically for windsurfing, for windsurf masts and kite surfing, so the inflatable kites, and they grip with a U, almost like a U-clamp sort of affair, and I just thought, well, they'd be okay for putting on a mast, wouldn't they? And they surely are. I have one at the top of the mast that will normally be the camera facing forward, and one slightly further down to go down the mast, and that gives you your shot. And all they do, I'll show you in a second, but all they do is just clamp onto the mast with a rubberized footer, and they're really quite big, and they just spin and tie down to your mast. Again, I've never had one fall off. These are slightly more difficult to tie onto the boat because there really isn't anywhere to tie to. On my laser, it's a bit thicker at the top. These just fit the laser, just fit on the laser, but you can tie the camera onto the loop of the bit that goes over the top of the mast on the laser sail. You can tie a safety rope onto that. Like I say, they just clamp onto your mast, and there is your down shot and your forward shot. So what we can have the suction mount on the deck, one forward, one back, and we can have one or even two up the masts. Now, the obvious difficulty with these is you put them onto the mast, and in the Lightning and the laser it's sort of fine at least mounting them, but once they're up, you've got to switch your cameras on. And if you don't have remote controls, and I don't really have any suitable remote controls with any of my cameras to switch them on and start recording, so you've got to tip the boat over, start recording and put it back up. That's your difficulty, so that's why I don't always have them on all that often. So there's your little bit of a handicap. They have two ranges, Flymount. They have this one comes up to about 40mm width, but the next one doesn't start until 80mm up to 130, and I have been kind of contacting Flymount with a view to getting something in the middle, and if we got something that was in the kind of 45 to 80 range, we could probably reach the masts, because most of our masts are probably around that range, so you could probably do these and fit them onto the mast while standing up. The boom a little bit of a different story depending on which boat I'm using at the time. So this is the boom from my Lightning, and you'll see what I mean about the width of the fly mount. So I always use I can use the fly mount if I want to. That comes out to maximum, but we've got a slidey section here for the outhaul controls on the Lightning, so I do tend to put the fly mount there, and this is right out at its almost maximum, and it won't quite go on. So this is the original. I think the other one's slightly wider, so it does go on. It fits. There we go. And I'll just screw that down. Now this is the boom's carbon, so I don't tend to tighten it too tight, but it's a good fit. I mean, these have never fallen off. So that's tightened down, that's not moving anywhere, and then this bit I can alter that the direction I want to put the camera onto there. So that's the fly mount, but the alternative is the GoPro mount, which is an actual clamp. But I have to say, now I'm going to say that I lost one of these. I did lose one of these at Bala this year, but it has to be said that was entirely my fault, because I was faffing around with trying to adjust it, because this did slip. And all it does is just clamp onto that's a simple screw down bolt, clamp down onto your boom, and I've unwound that rather too far, but it just screws down. So you just tie that down, that's solid, and it does have this adjuster on the front there that you can turn and click into the right direction. So that'd be straight along your boom. You put your cameras on there and you go straight along the boom. So that's the GoPro big clamp. So there, that's how I clamp the cameras onto the boom. So that's how I managed to fit the cameras onto my boats to make them nice and solid. More specifically there, my laser and my Lightning. Now, my RS Vario is a little bit different. The boom is a lot thicker, like a lot of other RS boats, I'd imagine, but it's a bit more round in the kind of 70, maybe even 75 mil diameter region. And I don't have a clamp big enough for that. And that's why I was talking about fly mount, making the slightly middle size clamp for things like that. I guess you could use a massive Jubilee clip. But ultimately what I did, the boom's made of aluminium, and a little bit like the 49er you can see here, I just drilled through the boom, fitted a standard GoPro prong mount, and then used one of these multi-directional ball head joints to mount cameras on both sides of the boom, which gives me a lot more flexibility. So that's the mounts. That's the mounts done for the camera. Next up, what if you want to make a story? What if you want some sound? You're going to need a microphone. And that's where we're going next. Microphones. See you next time.